I plan to run another term. If the good Lord gives me good health, I'll continue, but only the good Lord knows. But so far I've been blessed with good health. So I just want to thank you all very much for your attention. Yes?
I have one more question. This is about the HR 442, and I was wondering, what do you think about the original landowners' claims?
Oh, I'm very sympathetic with all the original landowners. In fact, I did something very good for the landowners down in Janepson. Remember when the 9/11 occurred and they closed the base because of security reasons and they couldn't get in? They had two commercial, what was it called? Star Sand and something else. So they had to close that down because they couldn't bring in busloads of people all the time when all the bases across the nation, 9/11, were secured. And so they were not able to get to their land. So we were able to work with them. It took about, how many years, John?
Well, we were able to get them
Yeah.
access to their land through the security gate.
No, but how long did it take?
Well, that didn't take not more than a year once they,
No.
but they could not go back to the ecotourism they used to have before. The military was never going to go back to the days where charter buses full of tourists could go down to Hinaps. What we did for them was we provided funding as an earmark for road improvements, and now Hinapson has a new road where they don't have to wait for low tide anymore. They have a new road to give them full access to their property.
So DPW was given the $3 million, they built the road, and I was down there about a month ago, or maybe a month and a half. And they gave me a nice little appreciation picnic. But now all those families can enjoy their properties down there. So, you know, the original landowners, many things that happened. Let me tell you folks, you know Sumai, the naval base, that was the Bordallo Pangilinan property and the people of Santa Rita, many of them, Tauruses and so forth. That's all taken away. The only thing that's left down there that we can go once a year is the cemetery. And so, but my family has just, you know, they said that's it. It was needed for security purposes, and that's the way it is. Mr. Ariarte here, what is your property?
The Congresswoman has met with the original landowners.
Many times.
And the real issue is, when you look at Retidian, first of all, you have to understand the history of Retidian. How many of you even know when Retidian was taken from them? It was originally taken in the 50s, and then a second round of court cases in 62. Was put up for excess around 1992, and the Fish and Wildlife Service ended up acquiring it. Do you know why Fish and Wildlife acquired Retidian? Okay, you got to scratch the surface of the issue. There used to be a Navy listening station at Retidian that was built in the 60s. That's what the Navy condemned Retidian for. And when that became obsolete in 90s, the Navy listed that property as excess. Now here's ancient history for you. The Air Force wanted to put a radar over the horizon backscatter radar site at Retidian. The Air Force wanted to acquire the property. Some people thought the best way to stop the Air Force was to invoke the Endangered Species Act. So they asked Governor Adda, anyone hear this story before?
No.
They asked Governor Adda to list certain species as endangered, to write to the Fish and Wildlife Service and list certain species as endangered. He did that. You're right, it stopped the radar. And guess what happened in October 93? The Fish and Wildlife Service, the people they wrote to, took the land, as was their right under the law. Back in those days, the law was, if DOD is giving up land, any other federal agency can ask for the land. The Fish and Wildlife Service asked for the land on the basis of preserving the habitat and species recovery. So we've been meeting with the landowners because they want their land back. But listen to some of the arguments from people who oppose the buildup just to oppose the buildup. If you think that it helps them to get their land back by saying it's critical habitat and 92,000 people visit there and there's all these historic sites, how does that help them? Because if they get their land back, you know how many people will get to visit Retidian? 0. Do you get to visit Aruna? Do you get to visit Hinapson? No, you don't. It's private. So if your interest is the original landowners, how does saying that the Fish and Wildlife Service is a good steward help that argument? Because you know, you don't have to have a refuge to have critical habitat. No, there's critical habitat on many private lands in America. So the question is, does this help that argument or not? And if you're going to use the NEPA process and ESA process to say, gotta follow NEPA and ESA to the letter. Okay, follow NEPA and ESA to the letter. And then when it's all said and done, and you stop the range, and there's no SDZ, and you say, now Fish and Wildlife, will you please give up Ritidian? They're gonna say, well, NEPA and ESA don't allow us to give up Ritidian. So you have to think that argument through. So the original landowner's concerns are pretty much different from every other stakeholder in this process. So the Congressman and the Governor are working with the landowners to try to find them solutions for their situation.
That's right.
You know, they can never give up their dream to someday get Ritidian back. And the Chamorro people will outlive anything. We will outlive whether there's a refuge, and we will outlive whether there's a training range at Northwest. So yes, it's got to be part of that, that those families are entitled to get those lands back when we can get those lands back. But I have to question those who would say that the environmental arguments help the original landowners. Because ask them yourselves. Listen to their own testimony. Their own testimony says, I don't think the Fish and Wildlife Service does a good job of species recovery. And by the way, what does visiting a beach have to do with species recovery?
You guys mentioned that that this is a certain area that might be a good place for surface danger zone, and you're speaking about the mitigation plans on taking this wildlife refuge and moving it somewhere else. My biggest question and
Can I stop you there? The Congresswoman's position, which was part of 4402, is asking the Fish and Wildlife Service, really, folks, except for today, I don't know where you guys find that they are our friends. Ask the Arteros.
So
ask the Arteros how much trouble they've given them in access to their own land. But let me say this about what she said. She asked the Secretary of the Interior, and she asked us in the hearing, have you ever considered moving the refuge to an alternate site?
So my question that I didn't get to ask because you were talking was that how can you move such a wild, how can you move plants and then thrive in somewhere else? How can you move a coconut crab whose area is Ritidian and allow it to thrive in another part of the island? It does not accumulate to their life cycles. You're hindering their life cycle.
Part of the answer is the Fish and Wildlife Service's job is to create and maintain habitat for species recovery for the endangered and listed species.
Correct. And the job for the people of the island is to protect what is sacred to them, which is
and
those
the original
species.
landowners can protect that land quite well. Let
And
them
the
assure
people of
you.
the island, though.
Yes,
It
the
is
original
job.
landowners and the people of Guam are well placed ourselves to take care of our habitat and take care of our endangered species without the Fish and Wildlife Service. To me, it's a fundamental disagreement. If you want the Fish and Wildlife Service to do the job, you can have them do the job.
But my question was, yes, the Fish and Wildlife may suggest, what about moving it somewhere else, or, but how can that be an option? Why is that an option?
Because species, the particular species, the most difficult species to reintroduce is the cocoa. And the cocoa is attacked by snakes.
But there's
It has
also
nothing to do with habitat.
But
So the
planting
reintroduction
trees.
could make sense in other places, but yes,
But
and there are
there's-
other species, but I'm giving you the example.